Hello, Deep Mindfulness Collective. This right here, right now, is the joy of being a live stream coming to you live from Brooklyn, New York. Folks, hello, good morning. Woof. Running around, taking care of a doggo. What a world. Okay, folks, excited today. We are going to do two things. Let me look at the schedule, see how tight my timeline is, because I would love to do one extra thing today. Yeah, that's going to happen. Yeah, we're going to do that. Okay, folks, we're going to meditate. Then, why am I off to the side? I guess I have to move over. We're going to meditate, and then right after that, we're going to actually rewatch our ayahuasca video, because I need to re-edit it and go through and give my editor new notes. And then we'll go from there. So folks, what a lovely time, what a lovely day. We're actually going to be doing a meditation on parts again. So it is Freestyle Friday, so people are like whiling for some specific thing, and we can do that, but without specific requests. I'm going to suggest that we dive right into the thingadoodle here, into the meditation. Folks, hit me with where are you at? What are you grateful for? Found out what was wrong with the dog, why she was so sick for so long time. She had Giardia, apparently. That is a worm. Folks, welcome, just Andy from Queens. Grateful for being able to recall my dreams. Oh my God, I had crazy dreams last night. Tell me what your dreams were, Andy, and insight they can provide. My dreams, I think, provided no insight, but I was in this, it was like Victorian era city, and it was with this character who was like the queen sort of, but she had all these clandestine meetings with, I'm not sure what they were, if it was like futuristic beings or aliens or something, but she kept being like, just have to sneak into this like hole in the side of a building, like whatever. But she was like, the problem was she was like dressed in this super grandiose way that was like giant plumage and giant things. She's just like, just going to sneak in and be like, hey, it's you. And she'd be like, like trying to deal with this thing. And then like the thing itself was like these really weird situations, scenarios with like aliens doing things. And I remember this one being that was like a black form that was like weird existential, like neither here nor there-ness. And then like we all went into this tunnel that was like all this crazy stuff. Anyway, cuckoo. Great. I would love to be able to remember my dreams. They've been really vivid recently, and I wonder what that's about. I would love to be one of those folks who's like really clear on their dreams and does lucid dreaming. And I know if I invest the time I could. But Alex from Portland, fresh air to breathe. Okay. Hello, Dave. Welcome. Alex, I feel like I keep seeing Alexes, in different places, and I'm trying to connect if they're the same ones. So if this is Alex from class, let me know, and we'll go from there. Let's see, Aaron. In Indiana, bald eagle flying over my house. That's cool. That's really cool. It reminds me of that kind of terrible show I started watching, Peacemaker, and I was like, I'm not gonna like this show. It was pretty okay. It was okay. It was definitely better than a lot of bad shows that are like in that genre. It was okay, and that's saying a lot because I don't like DC tends to make real stinkers. Yes, welcome, Alexandra. Nice to see you here. Welcome to the live stream. Okay. Andy says, the dreams are revealing a lot about past trauma in my childhood, anger that built up and leads to my action of killing someone. And then just keep in mind, folks, these are dreams. This is don't get all weird. leads to be killing someone and then realizing that I'm killing part of myself, and then just forgiving myself, letting go, and just a path of healing. Yeah, and so that part that wants to kill, though, I know this sounds like really crazy. Like, we want to love that part too, because yeah, that's very important. Let's see. Okay, Chris Ingram, Guatemala City, grateful for cold showers. Alexandra, Aaron, I love Peacemaker. Yeah, it's funny. I'm not a big. I was okay with the new. You know, what is it? Whatever the Suicide Squad movie. I thought it was funny that they sort of were like, James Gunn was like, your movie doesn't exist, and we're moving forward, and somehow made it so that it actually like fit with that movie, but was still just like, nope, we don't care about you. James Gunn is great. Hello, Alex and Aaron from class. Yeah, and just so folks know, it's Alexandra. Okay. Welcome, classmates galore. So cool that folks from class are joining. We got a whole class contingent here. Next, we're going to figure out who's the retreat contingent. Who's the retreat contingent? Okay, I'm going to check something here. Where is this spreadsheet? I won't say the last name because this is the actual last name, but we do have an Alexandra registered for the retreat, so just checking if that's you. Yeah, okay, great. So the point of it all is that folks, we're going to meditate today. And folks who are here from class, I feel like is this a bonus? Is this cheating? We're basically like a few weeks ahead in the guided meditations here. So that's what often will happen. We'll kind of bounce around and then do something a little bit ahead of time. So if folks are okay with it, often on Fridays we'll just do something totally wackadoodle and made up, something brand new, which I'm happy to do too. Happy to do that too. And I also need to record the meditation, which is part 2 of hanging with, observing, and connecting with parts. So that would be what I would do today without any other intervention. So let me know. What's up with you? What would you like to do? Is there some other thing that you'd like to do aside from that you're hankering to do? Otherwise, we'll jump in there. Naz, you're here. Will you either point me to where it is or put in the chat with an exclamation point in front of it, so it just appears in the chat, not on the screen, my notes for what I said I wanted to do today for the meditation, unless you put them in this spreadsheet for the guided meditations. Again, this is a note to Naz, in case you just weren't listening a second ago, which would be understandable, because who's listening all the time? No, okay. It's not in the meditation spreadsheet, the notes of what I wanted to do today. So hit me with what those notes were. I know that it was roughly, I know it's something with parts of, there was a specific thing that I was like, I want to make sure to cover that. Last time in the parts section, we just noticed clinging and aversion, any pull, any drive whatsoever, and we treated that as a part, and we said welcome to that part. I think today we're going to start with dialoguing with parts, starting to figure out what they want to hear, what is helpful for them to sort of hear, respond to interaction. I think that whenever we find a part of ourselves, and remember any drive within us, if right now you're understanding this, that's a part. If you want the meditation to go well, if you're like thinking about your to-do list, if there's any anxiety sort of floating in the system, we're going to treat all of these as parts and treat them effectively as though they have their own personality. This opens up the possibility that these parts will show us a lot about the detail of their experience of the world. And it's the case that these parts of us tend to be formed at different times in our life. And you can often tell the sort of what time in our life they came from based on their logic. So I was talking to one person, this is not a student, but they were talking to a friend, and they were saying, we're talking about God. I talk to people who believe in God, and I sometimes do that myself. And they're saying, oh man, like if I could just do this task really beautifully and do this thing really well, then, God would, I really receive love from God if I could just get this thing done. And I said, it doesn't sound to me like the voice of an omnipotent, all-caring, all-loving deity. it sounds like the logic of like a 3-year-old. Like like if you just do this thing right, or maybe like 6-year-old or something, like if you just do this thing right, then I'll love you, but if you don't, then I don't love you anymore. It's like that's and that helps us, that can help us see the what's actually occurring within that part, and like when it's from, and then with that sense of when it's from, we can kind of go to that time zone and just hang out and say like what was happening then, because parts come online because they need to. There's something that happens and they need to. So Chris Ingram says, have you noticed a harder time remembering things the more you meditate? Yes, specifically to-dos, not actually having a worse memory. Object permanence goes out the window. Object permanence totally goes out the window. And this is one of the things that we have to deal with. And typically what that means is we have to come up with systems, because before we could kind of rely on our memory and say, oh yeah, but there's a lot of clinging in the memory. So once we sort of let go of a lot of clinging, solidity of the narrative of things we need to do, or where our stuff is can go out the window. I remember the point at which this completely flipped, and it was in a retreat when some very dramatic stuff was happening. But I used to be very good at in any retreat that I was in, like, where's my stuff? My bottle's over there, my thing is right here, my whatever is over there. I know where my stuff is. And I had these really deep experiences on retreat, and then was just like, where's my stuff? I had a bottle. Where did I put my bottle? And I just couldn't, and I kept like losing my stuff. And that's like permanent. I gotta warn you. Someone sat down with me and was like, can you help me do meditation to improve my memory? I was like, no. And what that meant, though, is I have to create systems to basically be like artificial memory. But that's actually really good as far as functioning in the world. That's actually a really good system versus using the raw like data of like, I'll remember we have this appointment in 3 days and it's coming up. Like, it's a lot of clinging of the mind. So it's actually, I find it really useful to have all these things in place that remind me, and lots of reminders and stuff. And I just can't rely on my memory. One thing I have noticed, though, is as I've gone deeper and deeper into this material, that there's a kind of other memory that's there that I can't access it, but I can sense it. So when I'm talking to someone, it used to be that I would be like, have we talked about this topic before? Have we talked about this before? And when I talk to someone, I can kind of feel into our relationship and be like, we have talked about this very specific thing about relating this to that and these things. I'm pretty sure we've talked about this before, and I'm usually right. So it's this weird other thing where it feels like a different kind of memory, where it's just sort of like more ethereal and it feels like it belongs to someone else. Anyway, hopefully that's helpful and interesting. Alex has a note here that's long enough. I'm going to have the computer read it for me, so my dyslexia doesn't take over and it makes zero sense to me or anyone else. I'm sure you've all read it twice over, but here is what Alex says.
This is all perfect for me, as I've been driving deeper into ifs and had an intense dream the other night where I encountered a young part that was terrified of monsters. I asked her why she was afraid, and we went to my childhood bedroom, looking at the door, waiting for the monster to inventively come burst through. Obviously, my mom. Now I feel like I found this terrorized little girl with a thumping heart in me and not sure how to heal her.
That's great. Okay, that's really, really helpful. So today, So yesterday we did a meditation where it's the primary thing that we need to do with these parts. That's such a great report. Thank you for that, Alex. The primary thing we need to do with these parts is to just be with them. And this seems like counterintuitive because we're like, yeah, but I want to progress and I want to move forward. The part that wants to progress and move forward is a part. The part that wants to heal that part is a part. Right? Kind awareness, which I could define for folks, but just notice the space around you. Notice that space is not asking anything of you, nothing at all. Consider that that is a very compassionate relationship to have to someone, to a human being, not needing anything from them whatsoever. It's really compassionate. So there's a kind of gratitude there, but also just like recognizing that ground of compassion that awareness has for every part of us all the time. That's what those parts need to heal. What they need is the sunlight of the spirit. They need the sunlight of compassion. And so with those parts, one of the biggest healing steps, is just going to be with that part. So I think this is what goes into today. Yesterday was like, just be with that part. Kind awareness, let that part be with it, be with it. See if the part can feel the kind awareness. Let's emphasize that today. Okay, I want to make a list here. Okay. What happens if I hit? Okay, good. Perfect. I can make a list without it going right into the chat. I love that you guys are talking to each other in the chat. I think that that's like a dream of mine, that this is actually people talking to each other. Okay, so the next thing is, what's the next thing? So first, help that part feel your presence, basically. And you ask the part. You're not like, oh yeah, I can tell the part, I'm here with the part. You ask the part, can it tell that you're here? You're always looking for the part's perspective. And anytime you get like an answer that's real quick and easy, like, how old is this part? That's 11. That might be different than the part itself. You say, how old is this part? And it'll just blurt out 4. Like it's from that part's perspective. You can tell it's not filtered through memory or planning or, you ask the part itself. So that's, in terms of communicating with the part, you're being present with it and then you're listening. Okay, that's 1 and 2. You're listening for its voice and its perspective. Then we'll do 3. You're going to offer a kind phrase. You're going to offer a kind phrase, and then you're going to repeat the second step, which is listen to that part's reaction. Repeat, R-E-P-E-A-T-E. How do you spell repeat? That's not how you spell repeat, R-E-P-E-E-T. It won't show me a spell correct. Oh, I put a T in there. Repeat. Okay, that is correct. Okay. So then we repeat. You do kind of rest, and you do a phrase. You repeat step 2. Okay, this is my list of what we're going to do today in the meditation. Step 1. You help the part feel your kind awareness or the supportive quality. It might not be, you might not notice the kind awareness, but you might notice compassion, or you might notice, curiosity or kindness or supportiveness, right? If the response is something else like annoyance, I'm annoyed at that part, that's so annoying. That's just a different part. And you have to decide, do you go with the annoying part or do you stay with the original part? If the response is I'm annoyed, you're going to go, and you can't, and that annoying part is not going away, you just put the other part aside, you go with the annoyed part, and you start again. See if that annoyed part can feel your presence, your kind wishes for it, etc. And you just repeat the process. Okay, so then you listen to its voice. You listen to what is it telling you. What does it want to tell you? It might need a long time of presence before it's going to tell you anything. And what it might tell you, okay, let's do another thing. Its voice can be any form of see or feel. So you might be present with it, and you just say, yeah, I'm open to anything you want to tell me. And it'll tell you like, and just like some energetic or like whatever, some body thing, right? It'll suddenly be like, okay, a yawn or an image or something. You want to really pay attention to those body things, right? That just might be it communicating with you. So you just want to listen. You're listening and being present, you're listening and you're being present. And at some point in the meditation, we're going to offer a kind phrase. And the kind phrase might be like, I hear you, or, that makes total sense, or I'm with you. You'll notice, though, everyone's probably had this experience where in doing a loving kindness practice, you'll find that it is often really annoying, or you'll say, I love you, or whatever your phrase is. And there'll be some part of you that will come back and be like, oh my God, this is so stupid. Why is this so dumb? Oh, this is so annoying. And that's actually good information. We don't want to just say, well, ignore that voice, because what's happening in that moment is a part of us is not getting its needs met by our phrase, our I love you, or whatever it is. So we realize we have to shift the phrase, shift the thing we're saying to fit that part's needs. So tuning into that part and checking what would help this part. We say, oh, I love you to that part. And the part's like, yeah, okay. And we try, and your awareness knows the right thing to say. So we try, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense that would be annoying. And the part's like, yeah. Great. So you found something that fits for that part. You just kindly be with that part, be present, and say, that makes sense. That makes sense. And maybe you start to shift and say, I hear you. Or something that fits with the part, and you find what works for that part. A teacher and friend of mine, George Haas, has a phrase that he uses a lot in his practice that says, I love you, keep going. I love you, keep going. That's wonderful, but that was a specific part of a specific student that really worked, and that phrase works for a lot of people. There's a lot of parts of a lot of people that works for. The thing is, it's not going to work for every part, so you've got to come up with something that works specifically for that part. Nate says, according to the new IFS book, the way to heal the part is to convince the parts protecting that part to let you speak to it more of the time. Is that right? So yes and no. You want to be really careful, because in order to do IFS on yourself, there has to be executive functioning. Executive functioning can be a protective part itself. We want to look at this as a model of, at the core, at the core is, let's say, really vulnerable parts. Above that is like a part that says, get lost, screw you, I don't like anybody. Above that is maybe a part that manages that part that doesn't say screw you, but says like, I don't know, it's like judgmental. It's like, I don't know if I like this. I think they're pretty dumb. This person's like silly. And maybe even above that is a person who knows how to modulate that into, like sort of sarcasm. It's like, oh, very cool, right? And there are these character traits sort of complexity built, and each one is a little more sophisticated. They come along at different ages, right? So suppose you find the sarcastic part. So what you're saying, Nate, is shouldn't you try to penetrate that part? Let it talk to the other parts as soon as possible, and that's the goal. Well, that part might be defensive and not want that. So really what that is, it is true that over time you want to do that. But if you have a part that's sitting there going, come on, let's go, sarcastic part, let's get out of here. I mean, you get out of here, we want to go to the cool stuff. That part is going to feel like no, and probably give you a sarcastic response. It's also going to feel like you want me to go away. Like, why? Like, that's rude, and also I don't want to be alone. And often, maybe the sarcastic part doesn't want to be alone. So the key is, and this is a big factor that people really miss in IFS, is the key half of IFS, the first half that is required for everything else, is befriending that part. Really befriending, just like being with that sarcastic part. Like, I hear you, I'm with you. And what will happen is just being with that part and listening to that part naturally, it will tend to just sort of slide off to the side and show you the thing that it is guarding. And eventually you ask the part, like, hey, would it be okay if I talk to this other, more vulnerable layer? And that part will respond, and you just have to listen. That part will be like, I guess it's fine. But it'll probably tell you, it's fine, but I'm a little worried that it's, the pain's going to come back or something. Okay, that makes sense. Just hang out with that. I hear you. The pain's going to come back. Spending time with that with no direct, no need to go anywhere. Eventually, that part does sort of surrender a little bit. It's like, okay, that's fine. It's like, I'm going to talk this part. What if I make sure the pain doesn't come back? I'll make sure the pain doesn't hit you, and would that be cool? And that part will be like, yeah, I could do that. That's okay. So great. You go and you talk to the next layer, and what you'll find is that part will just rest on the side, or not. And you'll just be talking to this next layer, and you'll be talking, and I forget what I had laid out was the next layer, something between sarcasm and protection. Maybe like judgment. This is a judgmental part. You're talking that judgmental layer, and the sarcastic layer will come back. Well, apparently then it did not agree. It thought it agreed, but it didn't agree. So you just shift back to that part. Okay, we're just going to hang out with you as long as it takes. And then naturally you sort of shift to another part, hang out with that part, naturally or shift through. One of the best things one can do is get somebody else to do this with you, because then you don't need that executive functioning, which can be a protective part. So you could be trying to work through these protective parts and you're sort of stuck, you can't get anywhere. And it often is because the understanding part that knows the model, that's trying to say, okay, what comes next, that knows the directionality, is pushing and you need no pushing. So that's one of the reasons why it's really helpful often to have someone else do this work with you. So, okay. Okay, next we have Chris Ingram. We're going to meditate real soon. Is awareness related to the parent ideal parent figure protocol? So I did if you look at a video in the links, I'm going to start meditating soon, so because I think people are going to go crazy. In the links on our second YouTube channel, there should be a video that if you just search with diagrams, if somebody wants to search that real quick on the second YouTube channel, or just diagrams, or maybe it's drawings, but it should be like explaining parts with drawings. And I explained the relationship of IFS and ideal parent figure protocol together, how the models actually fit together from my perspective, from an IFS perspective. So if somebody wants to link that, great. We're going to meditate now, folks. Folks, I want you to find a nice, comfortable position that you can maintain for the duration of the sit. I'm rocking back and forth, just listening to my body. It needs a little movement before we go totally still. Give yourself a little stretch. Yeah. Yeah. And find a point of relative stillness. So we're going to be relatively still. If we have energy in the body that suddenly needs to move, we're going to listen to that and let that move, but we're going to do so mindfully. So I think my new thing for movement in the body is going to be no unconscious movement allowed. No impulsive movement allowed. I think that's going to be the new guideline. If it's impulsive, we let it go, and then we go ahead and intentionally move. Like right as I was giving that example, I had this impulse to sort of like move a little. I noticed that, I honor that, and then I just do a little bit of movement, physical, really paying attention like what's needed in the body physically, moving whatever that is along, coming back into stillness, paying attention again. Okay, folks, so find that nice, comfortable position. And when you're ready, we're going to begin. We're going to meditate for 25 minutes. Oh my goodness, if you've never meditated before, that sounds impossible, but I want you to pick right now. How long are you going to stay for the meditation? If you leave that decision for the middle of the meditation, I promise you, you're going to decide to leave. So decide now, how long do I want to stay for this meditation? If you've never done a 25-minute meditation, you get to tell all your friends, I meditated for 25 years. Find a nice, comfortable position. I recommend that you practice in relative stillness, as I just described. Find something comfortable. You want to adjust based on your energy level. So if you're really wired, you can lay back. If you're sleepy at all, you got to sit up, get the knees lower than the hips, organize yourself well so you're balancing from the tailbone through the crown of the head. The only way you can do that is if your hips are tipped even slightly forward. The only way you can do that is if the knees are lower than the hips. I spent maybe at least a decade meditating before anyone told me that. And I saved myself a lot of pain. I wish I'd known. Okay, folks, we're going to meditate beginning soon. But first, we're going to wait until Alex is ready. Alex, when you're ready, we'll begin. Hit us in the chat when you're ready, and we'll begin. What else? Okay, great. Well, here we go. Okay, everyone, let's roll. beginning by taking a few comfortable deep breaths. Just feeling the body rise and fall. Each time we begin a meditation, we begin with the momentum of each of the previous moments. So, observing your experience in this particular moment as you physically relax the body. Whatever your experience is, this is going to be created out of the momentum of previous moments. So, in this moment, if you're relaxed, it's likely from decisions to physically relax in previous moments. If the mind is racy, this is natural. This is based on our choices, on how we use our mind in the past. Not a problem. We're just recognizing that the decisions we make in this moment will shape the next moment. So tuning in very closely to these particular sensations, committing, investing in these sensations now as we begin to relax the body. Starting at the top of the head, relax the brow. Relax the muscles behind the eyes. Allow the face to go smooth. Relax the back of the tongue and let the jaw go slack. As we relax the neck and the shoulders, beginning to notice any different parts within us, any parts of us that are pushing or pulling, liking or disliking this particular moment. And relaxing the arms and relaxing the hands. And now coming into the torso, I'm going to encourage us to adjust our breathing if we have not already. I'm going to encourage you to breathe in a pretty particular way. So we're going to breathe in for around 7 seconds, letting the belly expand, the side ribs expand, eventually letting the entire chest fill and rise, and then holding the breath for 3 to 4 seconds. Letting the out breath be long, smooth, refined, as though we were fogging a small mirror and the fog were completely stable, not moving or changing moment to moment. Eventually letting the belly pull in just a bit to let all the air out. Not tensing, but just a little bit of compression to let all the air flow out, and starting again. It often takes around 2 minutes of doing this until we can begin to detect the quiet part of our nervous system. So it can feel as though all the activity of our usual experience is happening there in the foreground, up in front, face, chest, this area. And it's as though in the background a kind of quiet, still space is coalescing. So investing in this awareness. As we relax the torso. And continuing to breathe in this way as we relax the hips. The upper legs, knees, calves, and as we relax the feet. And I'll encourage you to return to your breath in this way anytime things become a bit turbulent or challenging. Overwhelm is not too much. It's just too much, too fast. And so we slow things down by breathing in this way, by calming the nervous system. So as we're breathing in this way, I'd like you to allow yourself to take in all of your experience. This isn't an invitation to try to add more to this experience. When I say all, I simply mean all that is easily, directly available in this moment. Whatever shape this moment is, that's what we'll call all. It can't be added to or improved. In other words, we're simply engaging with awareness. Noticing that awareness doesn't need anything from us. There are parts of us that have needs and wants, but those are localized. If we feel like something is needed of us, we need to meditate well, or this is going wonderfully and we want it to continue, or it's going terribly, we want it to change. This simply means that a part of us has taken over the driver's seat. So noticing whatever parts are arising and welcoming them to this welcoming, kind awareness. And if we do nothing else, this itself is transformative. So let's begin by locating at least one part of ourselves. This might be easy or might be challenging, but just noticing if any part of us at this moment had a magic wand and it could change any detail about this experience. Would it use that wand? Would it want our posture to change? Would it want some discomfort to go away? Would it want some emotional or physical pain to be reduced? Or would it want this lovely moment to continue? Any wanting or not wanting in the system, we're going to treat that as a part. So find that now. Other examples might be the meditator or any sense of self. These are just parts of our experience. And we'll begin by just letting those parts be here with the presence of that kind awareness. And as we are present with this part, noticing if it wants to tell us anything, wants to show us anything that feels important. And this can come in the form of any sense activity, any seeing, hearing, or feeling. And usually the first thing a part wants to tell us is about the thing it does, its role or job, or about the difficulty that it carries. It just wants to point and say, this is challenging. Sometimes parts don't want to show us anything in particular, so we just stay with that part. We just develop the friendship. Friendship is a time-based medium. So we just be with that part. If we drift away, just coming back to being present with the part. Seeing if that part can feel that presence. We may have a sense that we can tell we're here with the part, but can the part feel the presence of our non-judgmental experience with the part? The fact that we don't need it to change. It's okay just how it is. Can the part feel that? If so, great, just stay with that. The part feeling our presence and that kind awareness. Or our supportive, compassionate attribute. Curiosity, nurturing, understanding, support. Of course. Of course. If kind awareness had a phrase, words it would say, it might simply say, of course. If the part chooses to speak and tell us about its experience, we just listen, of course. Or we may find another phrase is more supportive for any given part. We can tell by the response of the part. What does it feel like for the part to hear? Of course. Or I hear you. Or even something as bold as I love you. This can often be surprising or difficult for a part to hear, so we're looking for the phrase and way of being with the part that works for the part. Sometimes parts don't want to be hugged or held with kind awareness, so we just sit nearby. Sometimes parts don't want to hear something as direct as I love you or I'm here to help you. Sometimes something gentler, less intense, like of course. Or I see. I see. And we're finding a phrase that works for the part. Maybe that's no phrase at all. Letting our intuition shape the process. If we're overly anxious about what the phrase is, that's likely a part. Asking that part to rest, step aside. So generally we stay with a part, listening, befriending, noticing if our relationship to that part is one of compassion, of nurturing, of support, of neutral kind awareness. If it is, we see if that part can feel our presence, offer it a kind phrase, listen to it. Just repeating the process, not needing to go anywhere or change anything. And sometimes other parts intrude. We'll consider, is my relationship to this part neutral, compassionate? And the answer will be no. I feel annoyed at this part, or frustrated, or any number of responses. And we know that that is not the nature of kind awareness. It's not a problem. It's just a different part. Sometimes our response to a part will be to understand it intellectually. This is often the intellectual part. Or to heal it. This is a healing or doing part. So we ask that part to rest, returning to our gentle friendship hangout. But if we find that any given part doesn't want to rest. The intellect keeps wanting to understand, or the part that's judging keeps judging. Then we simply shift to that part. Of course, that makes perfect sense that you want to understand or judge or dislike. Of course. And we start the process over, just being present with whatever that part is. Seeing if that part can feel that presence, that support, that kindness. Remembering that awareness can simply pass through any object. Seeing if that part can feel that compassion inside of it, within it. Listening to the part. Trying to discover its perspective. What is its worldview? Often it's very simple, very task-oriented. It has a job to do, or a way that it experiences the world. Of course. And if it feels right to the part, finding a supportive phrase. I hear you. Of course. Yes. Or I'm right here. Always checking if this is what helps and supports the part. Always moving at the speed of the part. The need of the part is asking the body to move or stretch or adjust, always checking in with this. Sometimes just moving the body to see if the part wants to. Use that to navigate, to expand, to soften. Is there a way of breathing, stretching, yawning that would be supportive for this part? And parts are often very isolated. They have their job, their pain. So what I'd like you to do is to stay with this part and allow a tiny bit of light to enter the eyes. Eventually allowing the eyes to rest on a single point as they fully open. Letting the spaciousness of seeing expand the spaciousness of awareness. Letting this part see through your eyes. Letting this part feel your body. And inviting this part to come into consciousness anytime it wants between now and next time we get to connect. Letting it know we'd love to have time to spend with it again soon. And in this way, allowing this particular moment to be the great teacher, that shows us how we might bring this practice into every aspect of our life. Okay. Allowing yourself to do a little stretch. I'm going to lean back a little. Chill. My body's like, give it a break, give it a rest. All right, folks, hit me. What was that like? What happened? What are you like now? Okay, this is something I'm interested in. Okay, this is the with diagrams. All right, with drawings. Okay, so Naz in the chat put the video that was the one. When you do a stretch, is it also a part? Well, that's a question. I wouldn't worry about that for a second. It's a little it can be complex. So one thing I'd recommend, generally, let the parts feel your body. So as you're stretching now, if you still have any contact with that part, go ahead and feel your whole body, because parts get very isolated and locked up. Feel the whole body as you're stretching, as you're adjusting. Like, let those parts feel everything that's happening. It's really important. Naz just put the video in the chat, which is the one I mentioned explaining ideal parent figure protocol and IFS with drawings. Drawings, not diagrams. So, beep, 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 beep. When you do a stretch, is that also a part? It's possible a part is doing that. It's possible it's not. Like, you can stretch without a part doing it. A part can stretch the body. So it could be either or. So, folks, very thirsty. Hit me with reports, questions, comments, queries, challenges, or concerns. There's the Discord. I'm going to crack open the Discord right now. And we're going to go from there. Where is that? Okay, we're going to crack that open and chit chat like kitty cats. Oh. Okay, fine. Okay, I'm in the Discord if you want to jump in. No sweat. Woof. My system is like, maybe you want to take a nap, but I'm also trying to pay attention recently, like the down regulated energy. I think sometimes is very good. It's like, okay, you want to slow things down. The other part is that there can be a kind of, what is it called? Like narcotic, disassociative sort of, freeze response that can come in. And I think I've been really finding a part of me that has a really intense freeze response. So I've been big into doing like the somatic experiencing stuff where you're like getting the body to shake to like move that material around. I think that's actually because I was spending time with that part that has a big freeze response. I think that's what it wants. It wants a little jiggle. As silly as it looks, that is what is up. Okay, we have folks here. Great. Chris Ingram's here. Amuse Dave is here. Chris, we're going to bring you into the chat. Hit me. You are now invited to speak. Hello, sir.
Hi, Anish.
Hello.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Great, thanks. So I have a question. When you come...
Wait, Chris, let me ask you, where are you from? Where are you? Yeah, where are you from?
Guatemala City. Guatemala.
It's funny. At this moment, you sound so much like Dave. It's crazy. Just the little bit of that you said so far. So it's so funny. I was like thinking like maybe Dave has like several accounts just pretending to be different people because he has a lot of questions and wants to spread them out. Anyway, just kidding. Chris, tell me where you're at. You tell me where you're at. Tell me what your question is.
Okay, I'm Guatemala City, Guatemala, and my question is, when it relates to parts, what do you think about practices that you imagine like ideal qualities or your ideal self, and you
Hmm.
set an intention to like absorb those qualities or live those qualities?
Yeah. So if you search in the same link that I gave you before, Naz will be kind enough probably to give us this link. Is I did a practice on manifesting. I'll recommend that one, and that's if you want to look at like my ideal qualities and moving in that direction. That's the practice that I'll do. It's a little different than what you might think of as a usual manifesting practice, but that's a way to go. Um, so that I think in that live stream I'm going to talk about it pretty explicitly, but the short version I would say is a few things. One, I typically I talk about values all the time. This might blow some people's minds. It blows my mind when I think about the implications of this, but what I think of as values is values are parts without their burden or their pain. And once we take away the pain and the difficulty of any given part, it'll have a thing it wants to do. It's like, but I want to see the world, or I want to like play games, or I want to, and so playfulness or exploration becomes a value. So part of what we're doing is we're always approaching parts from just all these different directions, and our values are our unburdened parts. So if you want to talk about your ideal person, remember what can be happening is a part can be saying, well, my ideal would be X, Y, and Z, and I would have a cool car, and I would have this, and I have that, and these are all projections of these particular parts of what they think would make them have their needs met. But often those parts are carrying burdens and carrying pain, and so they're trying to get those needs met by resolving these things. So our values are our deep sort of seated needs, the things that we want to invest our whole life force into, without all the pain and suffering that are sort of ground in there. So that's why we're always developing our values and we're always looking at parts, to cultivate in that way. So we just want to be careful that just because some part of us is like, I want this thing and this would be great, we don't take that as gospel. That could just be a part getting its needs met, in a way that is potentially, not ideal. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and yeah, that answered the question pretty well. Before I let you go,
Pretty, pretty
in
geniusly, pretty perfectly. I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
otherworldly, alien-like,
Yeah.
yeah, how do you? So, in your experience, because you were recommended a while back George House and
Hmm.
his teachings for ideal parent figure protocol, and I checked them out. Have you seen? So, for example, if you stick to a guided meditation
Hmm.
with the ideal parent figure protocol, in your experience, does that have similar effects to IFS therapy, or is IFS therapy like
It is
quicker?
different. It is definitely different, and I think that what it will tend to do, because it doesn't go through different parts. It just says like, okay, imagine yourself as an infant, and so that can be a part of you, or that can be part of your experience, or that's not necessarily each individual part. That could be, a more sort of generic sense of yourself as an infant, which is great. But also, it doesn't go into the detail because you go through all these different parts and explore them. The other thing is that, um, the question is, the realization is those ideal parents, those are also parts. Those are not what, from IFS perspective or from a kind of like even Hindu perspective, is like your true self. And so what it's interesting because the technique actually comes from Dan Brown. Uh,
Yeah.
and Dan Brown, there is a sense of like our true being, our true nature in his system, but that's not, in a sense, the ideal parents are a sort of bridge between that ideal nature and ourselves. So it's good. It's a good sort of, in a way, it's like a trick to get ourselves to like know that there is an ideal possible, um, and it doesn't necessarily give us like direct access to that particular ideal self. And when I talk about the ideal self, I'm thinking of basically kind awareness is ultimately, over time, we realize that kind awareness is us. There's no way we could perceive it or come in contact with it unless it was part of our true nature. And then starting to realize like, oh, that loving, compassionate way of being is actually our true self. So I'm trying to get people to really directly see that that is the case.
Okay.
So awesome. Nice. Great
Thank
work.
you.
Yeah, thank
I'll
you.
let you get to the other questions.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, we got other folks popping in here. Let me just get to Aaron. Just Andy says something here in the chat.
That was a super interesting meditation.
Cool.
There was a lot of SHF in during the instruction. It just felt like a dreamlike tour of my inner world. The breathing was also very relaxing and kindness-like sensation that seems very healing to the different parts.
Yep.
Parts appeared to me as characters, archetypes in my dreams.
Yep.
Overall, time went by super fast. Realized the meditation was coming to an end when you said to open the eyes.
Yep. Yep. Great. Awesome. Great clarity. Thank you for that report. Yeah, we're letting parts sort of be whatever they want in whatever form they want, and they'll do crazy things. I've seen parts be like cartoons and parts be like weird existential shapes and anything you want. Okay, so Aaron B or Dave, if you'd like to chat, just raise your hand. You don't have to. You can just listen. But I'm assuming you're here since you could hear me on the stream to chat. So what I'll do is okay, Aaron's next. I'll invite you to speak. All right, Aaron. Hit me with what you got.
Yeah, I started with focus it apart. When I feel anxious, I feel like a pretty uncomfortable tightness in my belly. So I kind of chose that part to start with, and I remember one of your cues when you were guiding was, you're not trying to get this part to go away. You don't want it to go away. You're wanting to welcome it. And then another part kind of jumped in that said, no, I very much want this feeling to go away.
Totally.
So then I shifted and
I'll say really briefly, finding the part that doesn't like the difficult feeling is really important. That part is like a keystone to making the whole process deconstruct. I'm really starting to find that there's what I thought of as pain for many, many years is actually sensation in the body and a part that doesn't like it. And the part is screaming to the whole system, ow, 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 ow. What I'm experiencing is not the pain. What I'm experiencing is the volume of that part being like, no, 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 resisting the pain. And it's a lot of finding that part and helping it separate from the pain and then letting the body itself process the pain. And when I do that, like right now, I have, this old emotion that for many, many years was painful in my throat and chest. When I just feel that as just a sensation without the part interfering, it feels incredibly good. It feels incredible. It feels like the most satisfying stretch or yawn or like whatever that I've had, relieving, because that part can like rest on the side. It doesn't have to worry about the pain, and I'm processing the pain physically in the body. So anyway, so go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So that's exactly what it seemed like. So then I guess my thought was, or my feeling was, to shift toward that part that wanted it to go away.
Yep.
And to try to be with it and listen to it and be like, well, yeah, it's understandable you want that to go away. It's uncomfortable.
Yep. Go ahead.
So as I was doing that, then it felt like maybe there was another part that kind of jumped in, like a doubt, like a self-doubting or second-guessing part. That was saying, well, no, maybe maybe you just need to address the pain or, the uncomfortable feeling and not worry about this, or maybe you're doing this wrong. So at that point, then I kind of shifted to that part and was, just kind of did this, like you talked about the layers, was kind of with that self-doubting part and sort of the same thing, saying, well,
That's great.
yeah, sure, you're kind of doubting yourself. This is new. This is something you haven't really very much before, so it's only normal that you're going to have some second guessing and self-doubt. Is that
That's great, and that's great. And so in the decision tree of like which part to be with, it's always a question. You're always like, and you'll make a mistake, you won't get it right, and you're guessing. There's some degree of guesswork. So in the decision tree, one thing you want to check is like, you always welcome the part. Whatever part arises, you say, welcome, great to see you, of course, that makes perfect sense. Just in a 1 second sort of response, oh yeah, okay, welcome. And then one of the things you'll do is say, hey, that makes sense. Would you mind just like hanging out on the side just for a few minutes? And parts will tell you pretty quickly, like, oh yeah, I just kind of wanted to tell you that one thing. This whole process is stupid and this is dumb and a smart person wouldn't do this, or whatever the parts will say, all sorts of funny stuff. And you say, do you mind? You just hang out on the side, and the part's like, yeah, that's fine. And it'll just like rest. Okay, cool. I'm going to go back to this part that was responding to the pain. Alternatively, the part will be like, no, you shouldn't do that because this is stupid. You don't get it, or whatever the part's saying, or you're not doing it right, etc. Oh, okay, you need my attention. Now you know it's best to go with that part. You hang out with that part until it feels like it can rest, and you say, "Do you mind if I talk to this part? I don't have to." Whenever I guide people in IFS, I'm constantly saying it's okay to say no. Do you mind if I talk to this other part? It's okay to say no. And the part's like, oh, well, I mean, since I can say no, yeah, it's fine. You can go ahead. Like giving it total permission, like I'll listen to you, whatever you want, is really powerful. And, in guiding people in IFS, I found parts that were like, this process is terrible. We should stop right now. And so in terms of really listening to that part, I've fully stopped like IFS sessions in the middle because the part was like, no, we need this to stop. And we couldn't go forward for a while, for several sessions. And then once that part realized like, oh, I can really stop this anytime I want, it was like, oh, okay, yeah, go ahead. Just like, fine. And so we moved through that layer by listening to that part. Had we just been like, all right, come on, you're trying to stop the IFS, we're here to do IFS, we wouldn't have listened, and that part would have been battling us for months. So I know that's a little more detail than you're asking for, but does it help clarify?
Yeah, it does. And I was getting the feeling that I was able to do that, like the second guessing part. I felt like paid attention to it and
Mm-hmm.
kind of got it to step aside, and then went back down to the part that wanted the uncomfortable feeling to go away,
Mm-hmm.
and worked with that and got it kind of step aside. It didn't feel maybe quite as straightforward as like, what the typical, like what you're describing or what the IFS
Sure.
descriptions are, but maybe as I work with it more, it will feel more
It's
straightforward.
also often not straightforward. You just want to, ultimately, even if you couldn't detect any part, and even if everyone was fighting, if you were just present with whatever parts were there with the kind awareness, you're healing. It is healing. So that's, stage 1 is the most important one. And then this was stage 2, where we start to actually pick a particular part. We start to talk to that part, say, hey, how are you? Like, let's just hang out. We're just going to be here together. No problem. Another part interrupts. You say, hey, is it okay if I keep talking to this part? It says yes or no. If it says no, you hang out with that part. The one thing you want to watch out for, and so it's not very linear. It is, in a way, it's like sort of like a funnel, but on that funnel there's a million ledges and things, and you have to go back up and go back down. And sometimes you'll start at one part and you'll find the protector. That's kind of what it sounds like you've happened today. You found a part that was painful, and there's a part that's like, nope, I protect that part. And so you say, great, let's hang out with that part. And then maybe there's a part that protects that part. Okay, great, let's hang out with that. Whatever, we'll go at your speed. The one thing you want to keep in mind is that the breath in particular is slowing things down for parts, because the kind of awareness has no limit to how much pain it can feel. It's fine. It's like, oh yeah, that hurts. I'm with you 100%. Parts totally have a limit. So you want to slow things down enough that the parts are like, no, this is okay. If you find that you're getting overwhelmed, all that means is a part is taking over your system. It is blending with you. And so you, again, want to slow things down, see if there's any distance between you and that part. Say, of course. If it's still too overwhelming, you can just stop at any point. But you're trying to slow the nervous system down so that that part has more sort of spaciousness to feel what it's feeling in that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's really clarifying. So
And one thing you want to watch out for is like a part and a part and a part, and like things are coming really fast. And if things are happening too fast, like a million parts happening at once and everyone's arguing, totally makes sense. And you slow down the breathing and you just invest in that for a few minutes. And then you see, okay, who feels like they need to talk first? And you start with whoever intuitively feels like they need to talk first. Does that make sense?
yeah, it does. So it sounds like it can take a while to kind of see what all
100%.
that looks like. And, yeah.
100%. I mean, it's a long process. It's a slow process. And,
Yeah.
again, this is not available for everyone. I do recommend, especially right now, there's a crunch because so many people are into IFS and there's so few people who are able to do it. I mean, there's a lot of people who can do it, but they can't train people fast enough, basically. If you can find someone who's a practitioner who can guide you, that's really powerful. That's really important. I think I'm actually going to do a course on IFS coming soon. But, we're coming in our course, we're coming into it soon, so we'll have plenty of time to talk about it there.
Yeah, Yeah,
Yeah.
great. Okay. Yeah,
Also, I
thanks.
want to remind myself now, because there's a few people from the course here. I think that the next thing we're going to introduce, I've been thinking about this for a really long time. I think we're going to introduce this, is just to extend the class in a form of just, it's a group. We get together, we talk about the material, and we're just still practicing as a group, rather than necessarily being like, here's another curriculum. Because I think there's so much here that we could just spend time and basically in a freestyle way work on the same material. And I'm thinking of doing that instead of doing like part two, like starting immediately and like, here's part two, we're launching part two. We can work in a small group together and then go from there. So I think I just wanted to say that out loud so I remembered.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, Alex says the following in two parts.
The part that seemed to want to be known felt very localized to the upper left part of my body,
Good
almost
clarity.
curled up with a little hand reaching to hold on to my painful throat.
Alex says.
It held
Oops, sorry here. Okay, great. Somebody had their sound on.
It held a lot of sorrow, but it seemed somewhat soothed by loving presence.
That's great. And good clarity on its location, good allowing the visuals to sort of make up themselves and be like, the part look like this. And, of course, this is the mind interpreting sensations and these things, but that's fine. It's super okay to let it be like, yeah, there's a young part. It's over here. It has these qualities. We're paying attention to the part's experience. And so the part might be like, the parts are really funny sometimes. They're like little kids and they're like, I want to wear a hat. And you're like, okay, what kind of hat do you want to wear? It's like, I don't know. And you're like, how about a red hat? No. And you're like, how about, and it's like, it's supposed to be blue. You're like, oh, okay, cool. It seems so weird. It really seems like these parts are like operating independently. And if we give them that space to do so, they really do. So, okay, Alex's second half says,
I wonder the difference between listening to feeling the part and blending.
I'll talk about
As
that.
for a moment it seemed to take over and made me begin to cry, but I separated myself back out to recreate a relationship between the two of us versus us being one. I wonder if this is correct.
Very skillful. So I think blending is a good thing to talk about. So blending is when a part takes over the system. And we know this because that happens all the time. We're like, I got to get this thing done. And everything's... So an anxious part is taking over the system and we're like worried, I got to do this and that. Often, my anxious part is very young. Probably thinking like around like 4 or 5 years old, something like this, maybe even younger. And it's like, where's the thing? I don't know what to, and it's like, has all this anxiety and it takes over and is like, we need to get, X, Y, and Z task done, but it just doesn't feel competent to do that. And it feels really anxious. And, so that's what blending is. Blending is basically identification. A part takes over, gets into the seat of consciousness and tries to like manage and control the body, but it's like a little kid trying to control the body. So it's often overwhelmed or whatever. It usually does that when it feels like it has to take over. However, when we're starting to dialogue with parts, we might notice that they will blend, like this happened here, to communicate with you. And you can invite them like, hey, do you want to like actually blend with me a little bit, become me and show me your perspective? And if you have enough, basically like that sort of kind of awareness or self energy, the part will blend and be like, yeah, I do. And it's like, this is all sad. Do you see like everything looks sad and it feels sad? And like, do you hear that? Like, oh, yes, of course. And slowing the breathing down is a really good way of letting the system be cooled out while that part takes over, because usually parts don't know how to not be overwhelmed when they blend. So slowing things down, that part can sort of communicate with us. But I think what you did was very skillful, which is, okay, you communicated with me, you showed me that you want to have these feelings, I see that, and you created a little space and then said, I'm with you, to develop that relationship. Because the danger is they take over and then they feel alone. And then they're isolated again, versus they take over and you're with them to some degree, or you're consciously letting them take over. And then you come back and you're like, okay, I'm with you right here. Where do you want to be? Because the parts will take over to do their job. And you can find out what their job is and find out what they do. That's a big question. What do you do? And usually what they do is some layer of protection of something else. So you can find out what they do, what their job is, and that's what they want to take over to do. But parts don't like their jobs. This is one of the avenues to help the part be willing to release, is to see, do you like doing that? Sometimes they do, but often they're like, they have to, and they really also really don't. Or they just really don't. They're like, I don't want to be stressed all the time. It sucks. And so that becomes your sort of way of being like, oh, I hear that really sucks. Maybe there's a chance that we could, help you out of that. Would that be helpful? So something else I want to share here. Let me actually capture that. That is beep, beep, beep. I'm trying to capture when I say something I want to save for later. But hopefully, if I capture everything, then there's too many of these videos. So the point is that what? Beep, 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 beep. Oh, I want to talk about relief. So with most parts are really simple. With most parts, you can ask certain questions and they can be really fruitful for the parts. So if there's a part that's anxious, I have to do, everything is, it's overwhelming, right? A question I might ask that part is, would it feel relieving if you just didn't have to worry about that stuff ever again? And the parts often, if you ask the right question, will go, oh yeah, oh my God, that would be great. Oh, what a relief. And so you're asking like, would it be relieving if X, and you're trying to, you have a sense of like, wouldn't it be nice if you didn't have to do that? Sometimes the parts won't respond yes, they'll respond I don't know, or something else, but sometimes they'll say, yeah, that would be great if you didn't have to feel that pain. What if you never had to worry about that again? What if you could finally take a break? That would be great. You want to go in that direction. You want to help the part stay in that direction, because the part's going to want to revert back to its job and revert back to the thing it's worried about and to revert back to pointing at the pain. But for just a little while, you just want the part to feel that relief. Wouldn't it be relieving if you never had to pay attention to that pain again? Oh, yes. It'd be so relieving. Great. How would that feel? Oh, it would be so great. What would that look like? You're sort of encouraging them to stay with that. Let that be the object of meditation, because this is something that's very powerful. Parts that are holding burdens, parts of us that are holding pain, parts of us that have jobs that are like grinding, trying to do things, that don't like those jobs, those parts know what would be freeing, but they can't focus on it. They're focusing on their jobs, or they're focusing on the thing they have to do, but they know that they're trying to get the thing. Like I always joke about the part of me that wants the new gadget. It's like, but if I get the thing, then and this part's like such like a little kid that like wants the toy, and it thinks that if it gets the gadget, then it'll finally be okay. And it knows that it'll finally be. If it finally gets the right gadget, it's like it'll finally be able to rest, but it can't focus on that rest, what that would feel like, because that's what it feels separate from. It feels, the part's anxiety and pain is it feels separate from that freedom. It feels separate from that compassion, etc. So a lot of what we're doing is trying to help it see that there is a path to that compassion, and letting the kind awareness be the thing that creates that compassion, that creates that support for that part. And so looking for the relief. Would this feel relieving? Yes. You can even do it right now. Like imagine all the difficulty we feel, all the struggles we feel as human beings. Go ahead and like, what like thing would allow you to have that feeling of like, like make the sound, actually feel the thing, and like recognize that as a direction that your system knows is the path of freedom and relief. And one way that you know that you're in kind awareness, that you're in, you're actually getting in touch with actual awareness, is that it feels relieving, like you can just rest there. What a relief. And that's part of what we're trying to teach these parts. So I wanted to point towards relief. Another thing I need to capture. Where is my capture device? Here it is. Okay. Aaron, is it really important to know how old part is? Or can that come later? So it's slightly important. And the reason, and again, I'm giving you a lot of background information, and part of the thing is that you don't need to know this information to receive IFS therapy, for instance. And it's actually in a way better if you understand all this stuff. If you do IFS therapy, just forget all of it. Just forget everything I'm saying. Just let the person do their job. Because the part that knows the model is a part. So the part of you that understands this and is like, how do I navigate this? And part of you that wants to get into this stuff is a part. Recognize that now, so you don't get fooled that is like, that's invisible. That's often the case, that the further we get out from the center and the more sort of complex or more sort of refined the parts are, the more they become sort of almost invisible, to the point where the part that understands the model and the part that gets it, etc., is like almost completely invisible. And that's the understanding self, or the viewer, or that kind of thing. We want to see that as a part two that also can get more power and more freedom, etc., from actually succumbing and opening up to kind awareness. So the age is actually really important for parts in certain circumstances. For a practitioner, it might not matter at all. But for someone guiding you, and in this case you're guiding yourself, so there might be moments when this is important, knowing, if you ask a part and you say, how old are you? It could answer with a clear answer, it could answer with no answer. Keep in mind, no answer is an answer, or neutrality is an answer. We take that, oh, thank you for giving me that neutrality, or thank you for saying, I don't know. Great. You don't need to know. Thank you for telling me. And if we get a sense of how old it is, we know where to listen for what that part has to say. Because the parts can manifest all throughout our lives. And if a part is 3 years old, but it remembers that when it was 10, it did this, and when it was 13, it did this, and then there's this other thing that happened when you were like 20, that this other, those are all good. They're good information, but often we want to go back to that point when it was 3 and say, what was it about that time? What happened? Not even from our memory, but asking the part, what did it feel like? What was the texture like? What was the experience like then? Because that's when the part needed to come online. That was its sort of origin story. So we're looking to, okay, that age, what was it that caused this to need to be here? We want to let our imagination go, because I've 100% come in contact with my own parts that are older than me. Whether they are or not, I don't really care. But there is plenty of research that says there is intergenerational trauma. And, you know, letting the part say what age it is. It could be older than you. It could be older than humans. I worked with somebody once where we were doing sessions, and there was a part that was like the primordial, you know, instinct to not die. It was like older than, you know, before we ever left the ocean, like life itself, the fear and the acknowledgement that it needs to move away from death. So we want to be a little bit imaginal. It is a sort of a psychedelic process in that way. So letting that inform and help. I'm glad it was super helpful, Alex. Very happy to hear that. Okay, let me just check the calendar. This is a great, fun session. Let me also capture, it's funny, I'm capturing everything, and I feel like later on this is just going to be a pile of clips. Okay, that was on age. Okay, beep, 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 beep. Okay, checking the time and date. Okay, I need to work on that. I'm going to move this on my calendar. So folks, if you need to go, thank you so much for being here today. I think I might try to make Fridays like editing day, because I have a lot of videos that I'm trying to make and they're not getting made. So I think I'm going to go back and look at the ayahuasca video now. I'm going to watch that over and give edits to my editor. So you'll be kind of first to see it. You'll be seeing it before it gets released, because there's more tweaks, but it's like, let's say it's like 70% the way there. And we'll get to take a look. It's like a 25-minute video, so we'll get to like take a look. If you need to go, great to see you. Thank you for being here. If you want to stick around, we're going to be watching some videos and doing some editing live here. Thank you all. Great to connect today. I really felt the group vibe today. I really felt the like hangout feels. It felt awesome. If folks want to hang out and work, feel free to hang out and work. Thank you so much for being here. And we'll go from there. I'll put on the outro music for like 10 seconds. Wait, outro. And we're back. Okay. Thanks for coming. As always, what do I always say? As always, practice well. Take care of